Hey, what's good? It's your boy, Mixtape Moth, and today I'm going to hit y'all with a review of the new Benny the Butcher and Harry Fraud project entitled The Plugs I Met 2. Let's get to it. Alright, so this is Benny the Butcher's first release of 2021. Last year he dropped Burden of Proof with Grammy-winning producer Hit Boy. That project received mixed reviews for fans who wanted grimy Griselda beats. They were left feeling a little unfulfilled. Now, shortly after that album's release, Benny was shot in Houston, Texas, and as a result was wheelchair bound for a couple of months. But Benny the Butcher is back on the scene, this time with Brooklyn producer Harry Fraud for this highly anticipated The Plugs I Met 2. This is the follow-up to Benny's critically acclaimed Plugs I Met from 2019. The original had an all-star lineup of MCs like Black Thought, 38 Spesh, Jadakiss, Pusha T, RJ Payne, and Conway the Machine. So some of the best and most well-respected spitters in the game had graced that 2019 project. Purists and boom bap aficionados couldn't have asked for a better group of MCs on one project, in my opinion. Now, fast forward to about a month ago, the Plugs I Met 2 tracklist had been revealed, and it seemed like a lot of folks on social media had taken issue with the features. Look, I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed when I looked at the featured list, but I decided to go into this project with an open mind. Sure, having exceptional records as guests on a project is always a plus, but I also care a lot about production and the whole overall sonic package, so I really wasn't too bothered by it. However, I could see why some folks might have been a little let down. But on this project, Benny the Butcher enlists Brooklyn producer Harry Fraud to cook up all of the instrumentals. In my opinion, Harry Fraud is the epitome of a consistent producer. Not only did he get busy in 2020, but he started off the new year with a dope collaborative project with Jim Jones. This Plugs I Met 2 contains 9 tracks and lasts a total of 28 minutes, which makes it about 4 minutes longer in length than the original. Harry Fraud provides Benny with a collection of lush, cinematic, and multi-layered instrumental. The features are Chinx Drugs, 2 Chainz, Fat Joe, French Montana, Jim Jones, and Rick Hyde, and I'll be speaking about my thoughts on each during this review. But with that being said, let me go ahead and give y'all this track-by-track breakdown. The opener, When Tony Met Sosa, has a jazzy and celebratory instrumental. The saxophones give it a nostalgic flavor. I would say this has a refined Kingpin feel. Benny is being real candid about the pitfalls of the drug game with lines like, "The game broke my heart in 3 places. I never show it. Close my eyes and the voice in my eardrums tell me before the feds come to turn these breadcrumbs to a hedge fund." Also, the following bars really stuck out as being super dope. "You know the rules. If you move backwards, then you do calendars. For street dudes, I'm the new catalyst, but who fathomed it? My heroes in federal sweatsuits and New Balances." Look, I know New Balances are oftentimes associated with either prisoners or middle-aged white dads cooking on the grill, but don't sleep on New Balances as a whole. I think the numbers 900 and up are the ones that are really dope. Those are the classics, but I get where Benny's going with this. This is dope lyricism. I feel this was a very strong opening track. I love the glorious, soulful, and jazzy production, and I think Benny killed it. Track 2 is Overall, featuring the late Chinx Drugs. First, I want to say RIP to Chinx. Now, given Chinx's closeness to both French Montana and Harry Fraud, I can see how this verse likely ended up on this album. I can also see Benny, being the charismatic hustler that he is, asking Harry Fraud if he had any unreleased Chinx verses in his stash. So we get this luxurious and spacious beat from Harry Fraud. Now, I can't say that I was in love with this instrumental, but after several repeated listens, it did grow on me slightly. However, it is still not one of my favorite beats on this project, if I'm keeping it a buck. However, it was ultra smooth and polished. I will say that I like Benny's flow and rhyme scheme, but as far as the bars, not that many stood out. There were a couple good ones. Chinks does the hook, and there is a laid back anthem feel to it. I would say this song is cool for the vibes and the sentiment, which is about winning and success. Now, did I particularly love Chinks' verse? No, but it was cool and it will likely satisfy hardcore Chinks Drugs fans, so I can respect that. I think this was a solid record for the kind of sound that Benny and Harry Fraud obviously wanted to create. Track 3 is Plug Talk featuring 2 Chainz. This contains a haunting vocal sample from a 1970s Japanese song. I really like this beat. It's got a nice melodic bounce, and I think it taps into what I would describe as this fly international plugs aesthetic. You hear the sounds of the pot scraping. Me, I only hear music. Cosign, I don't need one. I was the shooter, now I feed one. So it's some cool braggadocio hustling bars from Benny. 2 Chainz, on the other hand, had a mid-verse, ball hard Uncle Fester. I mean, why? It's like, was he trying to be a parody of himself? I suppose the 25 lighters on the dresser line was a cool shout out to a classic Houston rap song, but his verse was underwhelming as a whole. This was another track that I thought was dope for the production and for the vibes, but it didn't do a whole lot for me lyrically. The following record, Live By It, is one of my favorites on the project without a doubt. The beat is dark, cinematic, and mafioso in quality. Benny drops a ton of street imagery throughout. You shot up a crowd and you thought you was gangster, but hit a kid cause killers don't go to shooting ranges. You know my neighborhood was super dangerous. A record deal will get you lit, but a robbery will make you super famous. Benny has some ill robbery lines on this. See the dope gonna lead you to the stash spot. When you see the padlock, you know it's a jackpot. For a minute, robbery was my new profession. Pop up at your crib dressed like UPS men. Show me where the money at or get your neck slit. I love Benny's brutal and authentic street bars on this record. He's not sugarcoating anything about the harsh realities of the street lifestyle, because when you live it, you got to be prepared to die by it. What follows is Talking Back featuring Fat Joe the Don, aka Joey Crack. This is probably the closest thing to a banger on this project. The beat has a flute, stuttering trap drums, and a melodic vocal harmony. Benny states, all these chains on my neck, I'm still a slave in a sense. He goes on to add, you're not a gangster till they put you in the paper once. I know a gangster when I'm looking in the face of one. Fat Joe's verse actually starts out pretty good, but ends up super cringeworthy and even offensive. But he did open it up well with, chill with all that negative energy, cause I'll turn a negative guy into a memory. Y'all be taking big L's since the enemy. Southern slang, serving young bucks for like 10 a key. Okay, Joe, I like the reference to the Primo produced track you and Big L had called The Enemy for that DITC album, and I even thought the Young Buck line was cool. But you do lose some points for the super cringeworthy line about Harvey Weinstein, and that's not even the worst. He goes on to add, and watch it spread like the Wuhan virus. Now, I don't know when Fat Joe wrote this. Let's say that he wrote it in the early stages of the pandemic, then possibly we could explain this. But if it was written after Asian Americans have been targeted, beaten, and killed by racist Trump supporters, then this is highly irresponsible of Fat Joe and just plain wrong. I just hope that Joey Crack isn't slowly feeding into the MAGA rhetoric. The following track, No Instructions, is another one of my favorites from this album. The beat gives me strong, firm album or Puffy's No Way Out album vibes. I was getting this 1997 mafioso rap feel, which is fantastic. Benny drops some gems and street wisdom on this one. He also exposes some of the hypocrisy and inauthentic ways of rappers. And I feel he was getting a little deep on the following bars. They tell you anything except open the book up. I thought different. I read the Bible and the Quran. On the vinyl cot, I sat behind federal walls. I made a promise to sign a letter to God, but I broke it when I came out selling Mexican raw. So he's letting you know though, that despite this great stature in the game, he still has flaws like everyone else. This was one of the dopest mafioso sounding records I've heard in a while, and I feel Harry Frog was in his bag on this one. What follows is Longevity featuring French Montana and Jim Jones. This contains a somber but multi-layered beat. It's also a little cinematic. I feel Benny shows some maturity, especially on the hook where he puts the dope game into perspective. You know, you have to ask yourself, is it worth balling out for one summer to spend the next several ones locked up? We all have choices to make, and I think mature and wise hustlers are going to choose longevity over short-term gain. Look, I gotta be real, French's verse wasn't awful. He didn't make the song unlistenable, so that was a good thing. And I think most of us had low expectations for the song in general, but especially for French's verse. Thankfully, it wasn't a disaster. Jim Jones, on the other hand, had the best verse out of all three, in my opinion, but I can't say I was too surprised by this given his recent lyrical performance on his collaborative album with Harry Fraud. The second to last song is Survivor's Remorse featuring Rick Hyde. We are getting a bleak instrumental with some pensive keys and an eerie vocal harmony. I do think this instrumental is fire. Benny does some storytelling, but he's also reflecting on the guilt that he feels for making it out of the streets while so many of his peers fell victim to them. I feel this is a sobering view of street life that isn't talked about enough, in my opinion, but I like how Benny touched upon this particular perspective of the game. Rick Hyde's verse was solid. It didn't disappoint, but if I'm going to keep it a buck, I probably would have preferred to just have had 3 verses from Benny, but still, this was a dope and more insightful track. This album wraps up with the single Thanksgiving, which had been released a couple of weeks ago, and I gotta be honest, I think this track sounds a lot better on the album than it did just as an individual single. And I recall feeling the same way about Nas's Ultra Black song from King's Disease. Overall, I give this album a rating of a strong 3.5 to a light 4 mics. I'll probably just go with a 4. Now, if you judge this project against the first one, then you're likely going to be disappointed. Now, that's only if you are only focusing on the features, because let's be all the way real, the guest appearances on the first one are clearly superior as it had more talented spitters. So if you only judge this on the lyrics, then it is inferior to the first, no doubt about it. But if you rate it by the overall package, and when you factor in the production, the vibes, the hook, then I feel it's a worthy follow-up to the original. In terms of capturing a mafioso and polished drug kingpin mystique, I feel this album succeeds in a big way. It might even tap into that vibe sonically more so than the original. I don't have a problem with this album at the end of the day like some people seem to have. I think Benny's lyrics are probably a 4. The beats are around a 4.5. The features are a 3, and the overall vibes are a 4. So that's why I'm going with a rating of 4 mics, but I can totally understand someone giving this a 3.5. My favorite tracks include When Tony Met Sosa, Live By It, No Instructions, Longevity, Survivor's Remorse, and Thanksgiving. Let me know what you thought about this project in the comment section below. Who do you think had the best feature? Who had the worst? Thoughts overall on this album. Were you pleased with it? Was it okay? Or was it a disappointment? It's your boy Mixtape Moth. I'm signing out. But as always, it's peace and blessings. Benny the Butcher, Harry Fraud, the plugs I made 2, 1.